So I'm sure you've heard that the book was better than the film. I mean, we've all heard that one, and this is often actually a very correct sentiment if you have the time to read. However, have you ever heard of the book was so much better than the game? No? Well, I'm about to shock you with this one. I'm a Star Wars fan. I haven't been one forever, and so I missed the time when The Force Unleashed was a popular thing, so I just didn't really play it or pay attention to it. Sorry about those of you that I've just angered. I'm not one for playing power fantasy games, and this series is just kind of the epitome of that stereotype for me, so it's not something I normally would play. However, I am an avid book reader, or audible devourer, as I've been very much enjoying listening to these books while doing the housework or just editing videos for the channel. Yes, I know I haven't done many recently, shush, it's mostly shorts. So I finally looked up the Star Wars video game books and found, well, the book version of The Force Unleashed 1 and 2, but I haven't got there yet. With that, I put it on play and added it to my list of videos to make. I'm not gonna lie, this book actually was the reason that I ended up playing the game. However, I was disappointed. You may be incredibly surprised about that fact. Now, don't get me wrong, I have played through the game itself a couple of times now, and I have really enjoyed it. There is a whole thing I could say about the timing and annoyance of retro games on new consoles, but that would be a whole other video on its own, and it's not the reason for this video in particular. No, this video is my shock that I enjoyed the book way more than I enjoyed the game. This has never happened before. Normally I only enjoy the game books that expand on the lore, not the ones that are based on the original game. I'm looking at you, Assassin's Creed. I could rant about you for days. What do I mean by this? Well, the Force Unleashed story is very rushed within the game itself. There are characters that develops feeling for each other, and not just the positive ones. Things that happen in a strange order, and things that also just do not make sense based on the way the character has acted so far within the game. The cast of characters within the book are the same, obviously, but their interactions are much more developed than they are within the game. Vader is much closer with Galen, and we understand his motives a lot more. Juno and Galen's relationships make sense, and Proxy has a reason for attacking Galen that isn't just, we need a boss fight and aren't sure who to put right here, right now. From now on, there may be some spoilers to the book, and I do recommend that you go listen to it. The audiobook is amazing if you don't want to read it, and the narrator has a pretty nice voice too. Download it on Kindle or track down a physical copy. If you do manage the last one, let me know, as I didn't manage it. I just listened to the audiobook, if you couldn't tell. So, all done? Good, I'll carry on. Let's start off with Galen himself. In the game, he is simply an overpowered character for the player to play. You know, act out their fantasy of being in control of everything. In the book, he is so much more nuanced. He is constantly wanting Vader's approval as if he were his son, and it's written so well it doesn't come off as simpering annoyance either. Vader's betrayal really comes out of nowhere, and it very much has a lot more impact than it does in the game. Even when I knew it was coming, I was underwhelmed in the game. It's such a throwaway thing that the characters gloss over pretty quickly, but in the book it is a devastating moment that leads both Galen and Juno down a path that they didn't think they would ever take. It is a wonderful expansion of the character. Now, it could be argued that this is because video games have a much more compact theme, but I'm not gonna lie, I won't believe that because I've played BioWare games, and if you know BioWare, you know that there is a lot more expansion and chance to expand upon characters. Let's just say what it is. Star Wars Force Unleashed was a game that was specifically designed just to be a game and have no expansion on character. They seem to be pretty surprised that they got a number 2 and therefore had to revisit everything. But the book expands on that and makes it much more believable, so give it a chance. Also, Galen never finds his name out in-game. I know, right? It's really silly. I was sure he did, but nope. At no point does he find out that his name is Galen. That comes from the book and possibly the second game, but I haven't played or listened to the audiobook yet. So as I played through the game, I was sure I would find out his name. I was sure it would be mentioned, but it just isn't. You think I'm wrong? Go and play it yourself and look out for the name. It's just not there. Tidbit, but I checked again on Wikipedia and it's not even in the second game. It was on some box art and in the novels and comics only. How weird is that? So yeah, ultimately he only gets his name from the books and the lore, which even more points to the fact that the Star Wars Force Unleashed games were just a power fantasy game. They didn't really care about the character, which is kind of upsetting when you think about how everybody complains in Star Wars that there's no expansion. This was before the Disney release, so you can't really complain about that when this was LucasArts themselves fucking up their character laws. Juno is so much more than a love interest in the books. When playing the game, you can pretty much see from the beginning that she is just there for the possibility of romance. Tall, leggy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, she is the perfect object for Galen's affections, if that's your thing. In the game, she doesn't do much but give you information and have a go at you when she finds out that you are still working for Vader after his betrayal. However, in the book, she is, well, just so much more interesting. She is an officer, yes, but she has been driven by her family to aim for the best. However, she has her own haunting past, some terrible incidents that are already making her question her position within the Empire. When Vader inevitably betrays Galen, she is accepting of the righteous path of destruction that he wreaks across the galaxy against the Empire. However, when Galen turns out to still be working for Vader, she is rightfully angry. However, she also kind of knew that this was going on the whole time. You see, she's also a hacker, actually set up within the story, but I'm trying to leave some things up to you to read or listen to, otherwise it's just going to be a boring, spoiler-ridden review, and I don't want to do that. She secretly has been spying on Galen and Proxy, all by herself. And yes, there is finally the droid. Yeah, okay, it's still programmed to kill his errant master, but the change is in how that programming has changed. In the game, there's a simple, "You beat me up a lot and therefore my programming got changed. I no longer need to kill you," says Proxy. But that's not something that ever really happened before in any of the books or any of the lore of Star Wars. You cannot change a droid's programming by knocking its head in. It's only stunning it using electricity or reprogramming it that you can do that kind of thing. But you know what? We're not here for Star Wars lore. Well, we kind of are. We're here for a game Star Wars lore, which is different from Star Wars lore. Don't ask me. I don't know. I'm not a gatekeeper, but I also have done way too much research on this. I could go on for hours. This bit in the game, though, where Proxy turns into Darth Maul so he can beat you up, fell really flat for me, because it doesn't really explain why the robot then turns to protect Galen from Vader towards the ending. Yes, you knocked the droid about enough that its programming is different, but in the book it makes so much more sense because you can't change a droid's programming, as I've already said, by knocking them about a bit. It takes a fundamental rewrite, which happens in the book and is so beautifully written. I love it, but I don't want to spoil it for you, so you're gonna have to read it or listen to it. Again, I can't, as I've said, tell you the whole thing because I want you to listen or read this book, but please do, because this bit was so poignant and lovely and I think it's amazing and it explains Proxy so well. Finally, I'm going to go into the thing that I have mentioned before, and that is the timeline. As you know, in the game, you start off as Vader. Galen never really knows about this part of his life in the games or his past. He has a brief flashback and that's it. It doesn't explain anything. It's just his father's ghost turns up and goes, "Hey, you're my son and I'm sorry," and that's it. Which, in my opinion, sucks ass. However, for our main protagonist to know his name and to understand his master in a way that makes him continue his attachment to Vader, the story changes around a bit in the books. There is only one area that I will go into while this Force vision happens multiple times in the book. I want to get you to read or listen. This is just the first major incident. There are others. Give it a read. So, when Galen first gets the vision on Kashyyyk in-game, he sees a ghost, but as I've said, that's it. In the book, however, he sees through Vader's eyes, understands some of Vader's fears, and even empathizes with him through those fears. Yes, Vader is afraid of things. If you think that he isn't, read the comics. He's terrified of a lot of stuff. That's, of course, up until the moment that Vader kills his father. Galen, from this point in the story, becomes conflicted, and it works so much better in the book than the game. It helps that in the book, they expand upon both Juno and Galen's interactions around this Force vision, and not just this Force vision, there's several others that happens where Galen gets to see Vader's opinion on things and all that kind of thing, and it really makes for a wonderful, wonderful story. In short, I think that if you enjoyed the game, you really need to give the book a chance. And like a lot of game/book tie-ins, this one works beautifully. It just expands on the way that the world works, and it doesn't really contradict the game itself. I'm looking at you, Far Cry 5 Absolution, but again, I will get there eventually. I do hope that you've enjoyed this mini-ish review of the Force Unleashed book. I hope that it's just inspired you to look more into that format of media, and hell, do you have an Audible subscription? If so, it's really fun to listen to, so just why not give it a go?